Again, just a confirmation there that we're seeing that okay, guys. Happy? Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to be running through the dashboard and quoting side of Cloud Quote. I think most of you are familiar with Cloud Quote to some degree, but my hope with these sessions is that we can provide some additional insights, give you some additional tips and tricks that'll make the whole experience a lot better. So looking at my dashboard right now, this is a good active dashboard where we've got targets that have been created. I've got my monthly and my quarterly GP target that's been created. I've also got my team targets. I can see my pipeline. I've got a whole host of different quotes in there, as well as my deal stages. I'm going to come back to the dashboard in a moment. For the time being, what we'll do is we'll go in and specifically look at the quoting side of things. So we're going to go in, create a new quote, and fill in the necessary client details. So remember here, guys, those of you that are utilizing the premium access of Cloud Quote, we can import a client list so that those are available at the time of quoting. But as far as creating a new client, if the client doesn't exist in the system, we first need to fill out specific mandatory fields in order to complete the quote. So in this case, we'll select from a drop-down based on clients that were previously created, and it's then filled in the necessary details. Something that you'll notice is probably a good few months ago already, we've created an alternative contact that can be inserted as well. For those of you that aren't aware, what we can do with that is, depending on who it is that you're quoting, we could change by creating a custom field somewhere within the client section. We could potentially insert the alternative contacts details on the quote template as well. That would just be, some of the elements that I'm going to speak of today, you might see and might think that it'd be great to have available within our quote templates or within our document packs. Remember that we can create pretty much whatever you like within the output of Cloud Quote. We just need, you need to give us a bit of guidance of what it is that you're wanting to achieve. So some of the things I might speak of might give you some ideas. Reach out to myself and to Caroline after, and happy to assist with that as well. So in this case, we've gone in, we've filled in the client details. What you'll see is you can also little drop boxes here where we can hide those details and then move on to the next. And then depending on, again, your specific Cloud Quote profile, there'll be different custom fields. And this is part of the customization that we do within your company profile. So in this case, this particular profile, if I click on additional docs, it'll insert things like BE certificates or a corporate profile, etc. We can have switch on, switch off buttons. And what we can also do, in this case, I've created things like location settings, depending on the team that I belong to and where I want to quote from. These are all custom fields. So they're customizable based on your profile and the way that we set your particular Cloud Quote profile up. At the point of quoting, the other thing that you'll notice is we can obviously create specific mandatory fields that must be completed before you can proceed with a quote. And if a rep hasn't filled those in, it'll actually stop them from quoting. So just bear that in mind, and that can be changed in package admin, package editor. You can go in, if you've got admin rights, you can go into the mandatory fields and you can choose which of those fields are specifically mandatory. So at this point, I've filled in the client details. I can also insert a rating at this point. So what is my expected closure rating for this particular quote? I'm 10% sure or I'm 100% sure that I'm going to get this deal. And when is this deal going to drop? I can insert an expected closure date as well. And this is important because that will pull through to the your pipelines, but also to the management reports that your managers are going to pull to give them an idea of, from a forecasting perspective of what's actually going to close. Another element within the client section, so obviously we've got quote notes. So if I want to specifically make mention of something in the quote, maybe, includes a free laptop or whatever it is that we specifically need to make mention of in the quote notes. That'll appear somewhere in the template, depending on what we've done for you guys. Then we've got private notes, which are effectively just notes that we want to make about this client, something that we want to remember. But an element that we've added quite recently is this reference field. This is quite handy when you're quoting possibly the same client over and over and over again, quite a large corporate client, and you want to identify specific quotes. So for example, maybe this is a CCTV deal and I want to make mention of the fact, or, I have an RFP number or something that was provided from the client as a reference. We can go ahead and insert that. And we'll see that once we create the quote, this reference will pull through into our pipelines as well as our quote folder, as well as the reports as well. So quite a nice little feature that guys have been asking for that we've added quite recently. All right, so I go in, I insert the client details. I didn't show the logo, but obviously if I wanted to go in and insert a logo here, I could do that. So drag in whatever logo I want. The other thing to bear in mind with that is I'll actually show you when we create a custom product that we can insert and just drag and drop images rather than saving the image to your desktop first. I'll show you how that works in a moment. So I've filled in the client details. I'm not going to go in and create a quote. Remember, we can create as many different options as we like. And typically, an option is a basket of goods. So when we're wanting to quote a particular client, a few options, and the idea is that they're going to take one of those options. They're going to accept one of those options. Whether it's a mono device or a color device or an on-site or an on-premise PBX or a hosted PABX, that's the idea, is that you can have different options provided for clients. So in this case, let's actually do that. So I'm gonna rename the option. I'm gonna call option 1. So just option 1. We'll rename this as a killer A3 MFP. I know that there's probably one or two of you that aren't office automation specific, but for the purposes of this particular demo, we'll run through, most of you are, so we'll run through as if it is a printing quote that we're providing. And I could go in and rename my second option as being, whatever I specifically want to. In this case, I'm going to say option 2, this is possibly a refurbished, A3 color device. Rename it to whatever it is that we want to. Once we've created the option name, we can go find the product that we're specifically looking at. Alternatively, I can search for the product, and you'll see, depending on the search results, we're returning a couple of options that have come back here. So it's found matches for 3 different 227s that I've specifically created. But the only thing with this, guys, to bear in mind is that we'll find specifically the main product. It's not looking at the accessory items. It's the main product, part of the wording on the main product that it's returning a result for. So in this case, I found the product. I can either drag the product across into the option or simply double click on the product, and it will then insert that to the bottom of the list. If we go in and do that. In fact, maybe guys done a change recently. So drag the product across into the option, and what you'll see is we then have the relevant accessory items that are available for this particular machine. Just something to bear in mind is, depending on the size of your display and the resolution of your display, if you've got a really small screen, this can be quite squashed up. So something to bear in mind is that you can pin and unpin elements to give yourself a bit more space. So here I'm just pinning the products to the left-hand side so that I've got a bit more viewing space. And when I look at the accessories that are available, we can see the number of accessories underneath the product. We did a change a while ago where anything over, I think it's 10 or 15 accessories, actually collapses those accessories, so we've got a bit more space to work with. But if you click on that, you can then open it up and select the appropriates. Now, something I wanted to point out here, often when I go to clients, this is a feature that I don't see clients utilizing to its fullest efficacy. And that's the product hierarchy that we can create and the product structures. So in this case, this particular 227, we can see the different label items that have been created by my administrator, cover options and paper cassettes, etc. But if you have a look at this, I can either select an automatic document feeder or an original cover. I cannot select both of those. And as I select one of those, my price is changing on the right-hand side. The same with my paper cassettes. I can have any one of those, but I can't have more than one selected. These are radio buttons, and we'll get into this in a separate session. If you feel that you want your admin users to have a bit more training and insight into how to go about creating these product hierarchies, reach out to us. There is a video available for them in terms of creating and maintaining products. But the idea really is that you need some form of product knowledge to be able to create these structures. So it's easy enough to create it in CloudQuote. But the problem here is how do you go about, how do we go about creating those hierarchies? We don't understand the structure. If you can provide some form of guidance, or we'll assist you in terms of creating these hierarchies, we can do that as well. So for example, if I go ahead and take this finisher, you'll see that this relay unit with that particular price is automatically added to the right-hand side. So the moment I take that, I don't have a choice. I must take that relay unit. Now I can take that 2 and 4 hole punch, but you'll see if I try and switch on any of these others, I can't, because I first have to select that item before I can get to the next. So this is definitely something that I see some clients utilizing, but not everyone. It's incredibly powerful in the sense that you prevent reps from making potential mistakes, and you only discover those mistakes when it comes down to actually ordering equipment. That then becomes an issue. If we look at further down, we've got other mandatory items, toners and lightning protectors, etc. Those are all grayed out automatically and are all added to the base price on the right-hand side. So let's go ahead and do a couple of products here. I know that I renamed the option to a color MFP, but let's do a few different permutations here. So that was a copier. Let's say I now need to go in and quote on, a data solution. I'm going to go in and find whatever product I'm specifically looking for. In this case, hopefully I don't step on anyone's toes here. These are all fictitious, so the pricing is nothing's accurate here, guys. So please don't hold us to this. It's for the purposes of demo purposes only. So if I look at liquid, I can then go in and specifically choose whatever offering I want to provide the client with. So in this case, let's take a fiber 1 to 10. We'll take a 500 meg option, and we'll go in and take some voice lines, etc. One of the things that you'll notice now is that this pricing is making use of once-off and monthly pricing. And what you'll see is as soon as I select items with once-off and monthly pricing, on the right-hand side, we've got our base price. The base price is typically your hardware price. It's stuff that you want to potentially finance. It's items that you want to add a markup to or a margin to. Whereas monthly and once-off charges are, we create that as a separate. Monthly and once-off are typically the recommended retail prices that you're wanting to sell that product at, the list price that you want to sell that product at to a client. It's unaffected by bank factors, and it's unaffected by markup and margin. So when you set up your products, you can decide on which of those are monthly recurring, once-offs, etc. In this case, let's just select a few additional items and change the quantities, etc. So here I've now gone in, created my copier. I've added a fiber solution. Let's also do a telephony option of some sort. So let's go and find a hosted solution. You'll also see here, guys, like our product structures, the way that it's done in the demo company is we've got subcategories. So the way that we've done this is we've gone in and created it by solution type, so access control or data solutions, etc. And then underneath that, we end up with potentially the actual supplier. So again, if your structure isn't set up that way and maybe you want to just improve on that, reach out to my team and Tracy or Caroline will assist and just give you some insights as to how that works. But if I go in here, let's take a hosted solution, drag that across. And again, the process repeats itself. So go and select whatever products we specifically want and change the quantities of those. Something to bear in mind here as well as I'm changing the quantities. In CloudQuote, the rule that we have within the system is that we take the main product quantity, multiply by the accessories. So in other words, if I was doing 2 PABX solutions, or in fact, let's not do the PABX, let's say the copier, that makes a bit more, I think will make a bit more sense. If I go and look at the copier and I wanted 4 copiers, the idea with this is I'm now doing 4 copiers with each of the quantities that I've selected. But the price that it now encompasses is 4 times that. So in other words, the accessory items, it multiplies by that quantity. So you don't need to go and make this 4. It's already done that, because now what you end up with is you're going 4 times 4, you're getting 16 original covers. You'll see that in the template and in the pricing, we don't change the quantity here, but that quantity does change or should change in your templates accordingly, whether you're actually showing the accessory item quantities. But that's how that costing would work. It's the main product quantity multiplied by the quantity of the accessories. Okay, so we've got a copier, we've got a fiber solution, a hosted solution. Something else that I see some of our clients not utilizing necessarily to its full efficacy is the the config sheets. Now, what I mean by that is if I go and take this access control solution, so what you'll see here is, yes, I've got a few yes/no items, but there's no prices on here. What we do here instead, when you've got products that have got hundreds, possibly thousands of line items, CCTV is a prime example of that. You get this bulk price list from the supplier. You don't want to have to capture 5,000 line items into CloudQuote. So what we end up doing is we go in, we capture the product, and in the back end, we can load that specific price list. So in this case, when I click on, so just repeat here. So when I click on this little calculator button, because this product has got a what we call a config sheet loaded against it, what this allows us to do is then the rep can look at this and insert whatever quantities they like here. They could still use the Excel functionality in that they're searching and looking for specific, possibly part numbers, etc. But the idea is that the rep can go and insert the quantity of the items that they want in the quantity column. And once done, hit save. And what then happens is, if this has been set up correctly, we will pull back all of the items specifically with quantities back into CloudQuote, just like that. So these items have now been brought back in from that Excel-based price list with the appropriate pricing. So what I see a lot of our clients doing, some do make use of this. If you make use of ECN as an example, as a supplier, they send out their these config calculator worksheets. We basically bring that into CloudQuote, and then the reps make use of those. But you can do this for yourselves. If you've got consumables that you want to load, there'll be thousands of line items. Just bring it in as a config worksheet, and you can do that if you've got administrator rights. You can do that by creating a product. If I call this consumables as an example, and if I wanted to put in an image of that consumable, let's just add my favorite, Batman in there. But the idea here is that we can go into the configuration workbook, and this is where we upload that Excel sheet, and we define for CloudQuote what the part number is, what the product name is, the description, etc. And if this is set up correctly, that function will work just as I've shown you now. Now, again, guys, something that I see time and time again is we constantly get asked to do things, but we've got so many different YouTube tutorials, including this. So if you want to go in and take a look at how to set up the config workbooks, create or go into a specific product and just look at the YouTube video. If you get stuck, reach out. But the point is, we've got a lot of these videos explaining different elements within the system as well. All right, so I've gone in, I've created 4 different products. Now it's time for me to choose some payment options. I'll go in and choose 36, 48, 60 months, give the client a few different options. At this point, I could either apply a markup or a margin, depending on whether you're your financial accountant or not, they'll want to use margins. But if we apply a markup percentage, we can see that my total GP on this deal is 118 grand. Remember that this markup that I'm applying here is the entire basket markup. Sometimes what you might want to do, rather than applying an entire basket, is you might want to go in and apply specifically line item markups. So what you'll see here, I see this copier doesn't have a price. Let me just override the price. Let's give it a value. Let's say 10 grand. Okay. If I went in and applied a markup specifically on this machine, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a percentage markup of 10% on that machine. All right. So now what we end up with is it's now taken, but because I've got 4 of those, it's adding. Let's just make that a quantity of 1. There we go. So now we can see my GP on that specific device is 1,000 rand. You know, I've gone in and created that. You could apply line item markups on each and every specific line item if you wanted to. I don't see that happening too often. More often than not, it's against the main product, not on the accessories. But you could, you know, if you wanted to, you could increase and decrease accordingly on those. Alternatively, if I wanted to add, say, 10% on each of those, I could also go in and add a markup on the total basket, and it's then going to, you know, add 20% on top of. So we've got the 1,000 plus an additional 20%. So the premise here is that you can specifically choose whether you want to apply a line item markup or just a total base markup. And that can be based on a percentage or a value, a fixed value. The same here. So if I look at my GP, I could add a markup percentage, or I could just make it a flat 50,000 rand. You know, that's what I want to make on this deal. And you'll see that my sales price is recalculated, and obviously my rental values based on the factors have been recalculated. Something else that you can include here as well, guys, I don't have it on here at the moment, but you could have things like overheads. So if you wanted to account and add an additional value to either the base price or the sales price for things like freight or installation, you know, based on a percentage of, it is something that we can do as well. It's done in package admin, package editor, and you'll see that you can actually go into other settings and you can create an overhead value. So you could maybe make that 10% of what? The cost price or the sales price, and the client pays or we pay. If the client pays, what that does is it increases it by 10%, you know, by whatever the value is. But if we pay, you're effectively taking this value off of the actual sales price. So you end up paying for that. I don't see too many clients of our clients doing that. More often than not, they're adding to it. But that is an item that you can do. All right, so we've done those. Is there a settlement? Yes, there's a, well, let's make the settlement a bit more. Let's make it 100,000 Rand. Obviously now it's taken the cost price, the GP, the settlement. We've got a reworked sales figure together with the total value, the rental values that have been recalculated. Show escalation, don't show escalation. I mean, these days, I think pretty much everyone, you know, it's not even really an option. The guys have to show escalation. There's no such thing as doing that anymore. Free gifts, nowhere in the quote does it say free gifts, but if you wanted to build something into that particular quote for whatever reason, so let's add 10 grand in here, for example, we can see that that's now been accounted for in this section. Something that we do have here, though, guys, is if you want additional custom fields like other values, things like installation or ad hoc costs or whatever, we can create, like I've got here at the bottom, there's an installation field. What you'll see here is if I made my installation 2.5 grand, well, do that. There's a little I button next to it. When you see custom fields with a little information icon, you'll see if you hover over it, it'll give you an idea of what this does. So what this is saying is the accessories, that will show my accessories, yes or no. I don't have one on the installation, but effectively what this is doing is if you look at my base price now, it now includes a custom field with an installation of 2.5 grand. So if you want to account for additional costs, we can go in and we can add those to either the base price or the sales price so that it calculates accurately. So I've now gone in, added the installation value, something to watch out for in the next month or two. I know that Guy and my dev team are busy with it. When we set up these accessory items, we're going to have the ability to effectively decide on whether or not that accessory item has a variable cost. So what we'll do in the back end is you can obviously see the price is locked. I can't change it unless I've got the rights to do so, unless I can override a price. But our thinking with some requests that we've had from clients is we could possibly apply an installation field specifically on this copier or on whatever product, and have that as an editable field directly on the product. So you don't necessarily need a manager. That it could have a zero cost, and you can insert whatever it is that you want on there. So I've gone in, I've created all of these products. Also remember that we can add a custom product, guys. That's a product that doesn't exist in the product price list. I'm creating it on the fly. So if I wanted to create, say, a Dell server and put in an image of my server, I can go in and do that. So looking at that, add the image. I can give it a spec. It's an amazing server, does amazing things. And I can also go in and add different accessory items. So maybe that's additional memory. I can give it a cost. Is it a hardware cost? Is it a once-off? Is it a monthly? I can define those. So when I go in and insert these, you'll see that my price is changing on the right-hand side automatically. So additional hard drive. And we've got a screen or something along those lines. All right. So look, I took quite a bit of time on this particular option, trying to explain the different variables, etc. The last part of this, and again, it will depend on your specific Cloud Quote profile and how we've set it up. But what you'll see, every product has got a custom field section. And depending on what it is that you guys specifically sell or focus on, it might have things like call rates, it might have CPC rates. Here we've got a location field. These are all variable depending on your specific profile. Most of, if it hasn't been set up recently, your admin users should know what those fields do. But again, if there's something that you're unsure of, you can always reach out to us and we can address that specifically. But these are custom fields. In other words, customizable depending on your Cloud Quote profile. So things like the CPCs, for example, some of our clients don't want the reps to insert a CPC rate. Others will allow it, but they want it must add or reduce from the base rate. Something to bear in mind, sorry, that's another thing on the dev list very soon, is the ability to prevent users from filling in a custom field without, not without an approval, but only team leaders or managers will have the ability to insert something on the field. So what happens there is, if you are one of those companies where you allow the reps to insert their, the call rates or the CPC rates, etc., you could restrict that to only being the managers. So then if the rep wants to change the rate, the base rate, or whatever it is in the back end, they can't change it. They would need to request that the manager goes in and does that. So that is something that is on the list at the moment. Should be, I think Guy's got quite a few updates that are going through over December time, so probably before the end of the year. All right, so custom fields, we've got a custom product. I've added all my markups and my margins. I don't want to have to go and do all of this again for a second option. I've done everything. My second option is exactly the same thing, except for maybe the copier. It's the only thing that's going to be different. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to delete that second option, and I'm instead going to create a copy of the current option. So when I do that, you'll see that I've created a second option, which is exactly the same. Everything's the same, including the settlements, the markups, the margins, etc. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go option 2. This is a refurb device. And instead of this new machine, I'm going to remove it. And I'm now going to go and find whatever machine I specifically want to quote on. So let's just assume it was this one. Here's my refurb, so I'll drag that across. you'll notice that as we drag items into options, obviously this is going to follow the order within the quote template itself. So important here is when I go in, I might want the copier right at the top. You can change the order within CloudQuote, guys. You can just drag this. So if I hover over the copier and just drag from the top column, I can move that to the top. So I'm going to move that copier, to where the 287 is. Maybe I want my PABX above fiber. I can do that. I can shuffle it around without having to remove the product and redo it entirely. Okay, so I've now gone and created a second option. I'm happy with that. The last thing that I want to add, or I possibly should have added before I went and did that, remember that we can also insert current versus proposed values. So if you're wanting to show a client what their current expenditure is versus what the proposed expenditure is, we can go in and click on the product. And again, just comes down to how we've customized yours, guys, but I'll give you an idea of how this particular profile works. So when I hit current versus proposed, it now opens up an Excel emulator. In the thinking here is that we're going to insert whatever the current machine is that we're going to be replacing. So in this case, I'm going to make up a model. So it's this particular machine. What is the rental of this current machine? Let's say it's 7 grand, 10,000 mono volume. I'm inserting the CPC rates here as well. So the current rate's 15, color volume, 5,000, color CPC, 90. Okay, and then we can see data, call costs, ancillary costs, etc. If it's not relevant to the current versus proposed that I'm doing, I can just leave that as blank. But what you'll see is when I OK this, what I'm effectively doing is I'm saying, okay, so this 227 is replacing, one other device. We save that, so if we need to revert back to it, I can go in and edit and change. Maybe this 227 is replacing 2, 3, 4 devices. We're consolidating those, in which case I would fill out each device one under on a separate line for each. But here we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to have it one machine. And now what I've got to do is, I've got to tell CloudQuote, we know what the rental is going to be, but we've got to tell CloudQuote what the possible volumes and rates are going to be. So in this case, I'm going to go in and insert a color volume, which I will keep the same, 5,000 and 10,000. And we will do a mono cost of 8 cents and a color cost of 65. Okay, great. So I've done all of those. I'm happy with my quote as it stands. So I'm going to go in and generate the quote. The moment I do that, again, remember, it will be depending on your quote templates and what you guys are generating, but here's an example. So you'll also see that when I generate, we've got multiple quote templates that are loaded in here. We can do the same for you guys as well. There would be setup costs for us to create additional documentation. So here I've got multiple quote templates. You could have a one-page quote template or a proper proposal document, or things like rental agreements and order sheets, etc. You can have loaded as well. So if you don't have those, it is an item that Caroline's going to be discussing with all of our clients to ensure that they're, again, maximizing the CloudQuote to its full potential. But if I go in, let's create this particular layout. Drag this across. So remember, depending on whether or not you have access to printing and saving your quotes, if you require an approval first, there would be a button at the top of the quote which will say request approval. And you won't be able to, these items will be grayed out. You won't be able to print, email, save before you've got an approval. I am a manager, I have the rights to do so I can go ahead and print and save. But what you will notice, if I'm happy with this quote, if I've gone through it and I'm happy and I want to print or email, the moment I do that, it's going to lock the version of the quote. And I'm going to do that now immediately. So we're going to create version 1. I'm just saving the PDF somewhere. Right? Once I've created and saved that, what we'll see is the moment I lock the version of the quote, I cannot change anything in CloudQuote. I've now locked the version. And the idea with that is quite simply that once a manager has approved it, we don't want the reps to be able to edit the quote. It's left the building, so they mustn't be able to change the quote, or not even if it's approved, just so that there's continuity and that we know that what we've sent out of the system is what the client has. So if we want to edit anything, we can go in and create a new version, change something about the quote, generate the quote, and then you'll see that we, in the template, will show not only the quote number, but we should show the version number as well. So this is a different layout. We can see the quote number, the version number clearly. And if I go ahead and save that again now, it's going to prompt me and say, well, are you sure? Because you're going to lock version 2 of the quote. The moment I do that, remember that as a rule within Cloud Quotes, we always show the latest version of a quote from your pipeline, from your quotes folder. If you go into your pipeline, your quotes folder, you want to find that specific version of the quote, you can go onto the history tab and you'll be able to find that, the version number, whichever version, and revert to that specific version that you want to look at. And also we would see, if there was an approval requested, we can see when it was requested with notes, and as well as when it was approved or rejected with notes. So you end up with like a timeline of what's occurred with this particular quote. And if I go back in and just regenerate this document, we'll see now that I have variable data being the products themselves. So nice and orderly, we can see the actual product, the specification, what's included with the image. We can also show additional images, guys. So like if I wanted to show the finisher itself, I could do things like that. The only thing that I see is that can become a little bit messy. If you're now showing multiple images, if you can give us an idea of how you'd want that to appear in terms of a grid and so on, again, we can provide for like a time labor cost for us to implement, but it is something that is available as an input within CloudQuote. We just need to understand the output that you're trying to achieve in the template. So we can see here, option 1, color A3 MFP, follows the order of those products, and then we've got a financial summary. And this financial summary, again, like in this case, in this instance, what I'm doing is I'm showing each line item, the main product's price and then the total value. So this is the hardware portion. And then we've got the monthly recurring together with the once-off installations. And if there were CPC rates, those are appearing there as well. So this layout can be whatever you like. Maybe you look at this and you think it's a lot neater than your current, again, we can have that discussion with you guys outside of it. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're producing here. And then very clearly, I can see my proposed solution. I see we're saving the client 607, it's a total cost of 607,000 Rand. It's because my mono charge, I inserted 15 Rand instead of 15 cents, but I mean, the premise is the same. You can get an understanding. We automatically do the calculation and work out what the client's spend is versus what their spend will be. So clearly we can see 36, 48 months, it then breaks down the relevant costs, and we end up with a summary at the end where we end up showing the client the estimated savings as a percentage per month or as an average cost saving per month and an annual cost saving. So, we end up with the first option, the financial summary side of things, together with the second option and its financial summary, its products and prices, and then its financial summary, and then an order to proceed. So that is the quoting side here, guys. Something to quickly point out as well. I don't know if any of you have noticed this over the last while, but what we've done is we've created the option to create a copy of a current quote or a copy of a current option. This one you might want to do. So if you've got a quote with multiple options, if I went and said, okay, I want to create a copy of the current option, what that's going to do is insert that exact option into a new quote for me. I can obviously go and change the client's details to something else. So if I was quoting a different client, but the same sort of solution, it's a telephony solution that's pretty much the same thing. I don't want to have to go and do everything again. I can just create a copy of that option or a copy of the entire quote. And when I do that, you'll see I've now got in my third tab at the top, a copy of that entirely. That should save you guys quite a bit of time doing that. Something else to bear in mind when you do that, when you create a copy of a quote, and the nice thing is that Cloud Quote then searches and makes sure that if there's a price change, that it uses the latest pricing. So what I've seen, obviously within Cloud Quote, if you do a quote for a client and there's a price change, and you go back into that quote, we lock the price and the factor at the time of quoting. We do not change that. So if the client comes back to you and says, I want to go ahead now, and you realize there's a price change, the only way to do that would be to create a new quote or remove the product itself. So remove the product, go in and re-add the product, because the re-added product would be the current price, provided you've logged out of Cloud Quote after the administrators updated the price. With that said, we've also updated Cloud Quote recently to have an auto timeout feature. So reps that were guilty of not logging out of Cloud Quote, it automatically logs out after, I think the default is 12 hours. So they have to log in on a daily basis to get the latest pricing. So when you create a new quote, if I created a copy of a current quote, if the pricing is in Cloud Quote, it's a current product that's available, it will actually change the pricing based on the current pricing at the time of quoting. But things like custom products, obviously, this was not in Cloud Quote, so you're going to need to go in and change that. The same as the product that I had here with the worksheet, the actual configuration worksheet. It's not loaded in Cloud Quote. So the best way to do that is to remove the product, re-add the product, and there we go. One of the things that we've had other clients ask for, guys, is if the version is locked and we create a new version, we could potentially say apply new pricing. It's quite a bit of work for us to do that, but it is something that has been requested, and that makes sense. Like, if we could do that to make your lives easier, which it would, to have the ability to prompt a user to say, look, there is new pricing available. Do you want to use the new pricing? Yes, and then it will then update that accordingly. Okay, so just looking at the actual quote that I've created now, we've now got quote 905 version 3. If I go into my dashboard, we would then see whatever quotes we've now gone and created. There's quote 903, John's Hardware, available in my pipeline for me automatically. I think before I carry on here, what's the time now, guys? 12:47. Gosh. I'm going to very quickly answer some of these questions that I've seen come in here. So do custom products only exist in the given quote? Yes, they only exist in the given quote because it's a product that you're creating on the fly. It's not a product that's available. It hasn't been created by your administrator. So it's specifically for that particular quote. Can I update my existing quotes if pricing changed without redoing the whole quote? I think I answered that there. If you go in and create a copy of the quote, of that previous quote, you should see that then updates. But on the dev list, we are going to look at and investigate a way of applying the latest pricing with a click of a button. But right now, you would need to remove the product or re-add it in an existing quote, or re-quote the client and do a new quote as a copy of that. If a customer wants options 2 or 3, that's a request I get quite often. So guys if a client, let's just open up this quote. So if a client goes ahead with multiple options, so the challenge for us there is what happens with the factors, for example. So if a client accepts multiple options, and they go with option 1 and option 2. What do? Do we take the combination of the actual total selling price as well as the rental values here and add those to the second option when we create things like, rental agreements and service agreements? It becomes a bit more of an issue because what do we use to do the calculation? We are looking at potential ways, but for now, the idea is that the client is accepting option, a specific option. If you're wanting to include options, the best way to do that is to have it in a single option. And what you'll actually be able to do is, if I create a new version here very quickly, I'm going to remove, let's remove all of these. What you could do is you could copy products from one option into another. So if I wanted to say shift, what do I have in here? Just the 287 in option 2. If I wanted to copy this fiber solution, etc., into option 2, if I click on the gear icon, I can actually do that. I can say copy to option 2. And what you'll see is if I go to option 2, I've now automatically inserted that into the second option as well. So what you could then do is manipulate the option, take different products, add it into the same option, and then accept whatever option it is that the client has ended up going with. But yeah, the challenge with multiple option selections is what factors do we use? How does that impact the calculation? Because a lot of our clients don't just do quote templates, they do the sales pack. So we do a rental agreement, a maintenance agreement, we do order forms. How does it impact that? So we've just got to be cognizant of it in order to actually allow for that correctly. But it is something that we're investigating down the line, guys. Okay, so in terms of the dashboard, we've got 10 minutes left. I'm quite happy to sort of go slightly over, and if you guys aren't able to stick on, obviously this is being recorded and we'll share the session. But just from a dashboard perspective, something to bear in mind here again, guys, you can customize this. So in this case, I've pinned everything else to the left. So my deal stages, my team targets, reminders, etc., are all on the left-hand side, but you can customize that. And if you realize that you messed something up and you want to start again, just click on reset layout. It will take it back to the default. But what you might want to do, in this case, maybe I don't want my targets, but I want my deal stages to be next to my pipeline. I could go ahead and drag different elements, different windows. So here, if I wanted to shift my pipeline below my deal stages, you can see it gives you an indication of where that's going to go. Okay, so you can customize that. Also very helpful when you've got multiple screens. Maybe you want to have your deal stages on a different screen and look at it that way. Just hide this. The deal stages, the reminders, on the dashboard, you'll see if you don't have access to premium, those are premium access features. And just to give you an idea, guys, Cloud Quote started off as a quoting system. We evolved through requests of our clients. A lot of clients like the simplicity of our system, but don't like the complexity of some other CRMs. So we created a sort of a mini CRM platform within Cloud Quote. And that encompasses things like deal stages, as well as reminders, and then client tabs. And what we're able to do there is effectively create activities and actions within clients themselves. I'm not going to delve into that today. I am going to set up in the next webinar, we're going to explore the CRM in a bit more detail and the deal stages, etc. But for now, we're specifically looking at the dashboard elements. So just looking at our pipeline, remember that you can change from 7 days through to 120 days. Change that. We can also change whether we're looking at turnover, GP, or monthly recurring values, and it will amend those accordingly, both in the pie graph as well as the values over here. And what we're able to see is if we have any leads assigned to us, we can see those leads in our lead inbox. These are specifically my leads that have been assigned to me or leads that I've created for myself. If you go into the approvals side of things, this is if we have the approval set up for your team. So in other words, that specific users, and remember, you don't have to have it for everyone, guys. You can have it for specific users that they require an approval. So maybe a new junior rep, he needs or she needs an approval before that quote can be printed or emailed. We can set that up in company admin teams, and you can create the company hierarchies and so on within here. Again, guys, I've got a little YouTube video explaining how this would work, but effectively what you would see is once my users load here, these are my different teams that I've created, and it's as easy as us dragging different people into different teams and then giving them permissions. But again, we've got a YouTube video. So this approvals is once I've approved a quote. So if I go in and open up one of these as a manager, I can view the quote and decide on whether or not I want to approve or reject it. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and approve it, and I can, give a reason, go get the deal. Once I do that, the rep is going to receive a push notification as well as an email notification. Well, sorry, push notification if you're using the mobile app, which is obviously also part of our premium access. Again, we'll delve into that in the next session. So once I've approved it, you'll see here that I no longer have that available in approvals. It's now specifically approved the quote, and I can see that I've only got one left here. On this pipeline, you have the ability to open up a call sheet, which effectively provides an expanded view of your pipeline, which then allows you to phone and follow up with clients, and you could mark that as accepted. So if I go in and just show my targets very quickly on the right, let's say that this particular client has accepted the deal, John's Hardware. I'm going to go ahead and accept that particular deal. When I accept that, we can see that my targets have now automatically updated, and obviously my pipeline has adjusted. This is just a little bug that we've got to squash, but effectively what's happening here is just got to refresh this properly. But if I refresh that, there we go. So now my pipeline's reflecting accurately. But what you can do here, guys, is if we look at your call sheets, it might be month end, and we specifically want to focus on clients that are active clients and not necessarily draft. So again, explaining the difference between that. A draft quote is a quote that we've done, but we haven't yet presented to a client. An active quote is one that we've done, we've presented, and we're now waiting for feedback, or we're in the negotiation phase. We can see all of these, we can change and filter down. So if I go and have a look at specifically all of my draft quotes, I can filter down to specific elements within these. So my active quotes currently, if I open up my call sheet, let's say it's the end of the month and I want to only engage with all of my active clients, I'm going to go in and filter down to just looking at my active clients. Alternatively, if all of these draft quotes were possibly active and I'm now re-engaging with them, maybe what I want to do is focus on the largest deal to the smallest. And what you can do there is just click on the column, the relevant column, and it will change the sort order. In this case, from the smallest to the largest. If I click again, from the largest to the smallest. The same thing with the expected closure dates and the ratings. Maybe I want to look at the highest likelihood of closure, or the soonest to close. We can change those elements to suit and then phone and follow up with those clients. You'll also see here that the references that I filled in, that reference from earlier, that pulls through so that I immediately am aware of what that encompasses specifically. So that's the pipeline side of things. We've got the call sheet button. Yeah, sorry, Celeste. So we'll come back to some of the other queries that are coming through here as well. We'll respond to those specifically. The last element here, we've got the news feed, in which we specifically show items within or activity within the company. So for example, if I just pin my news feed here, right now we can see that Pat had a quote accepted, and Pranesh had a quote accepted, so did Guy, and Ryan achieved the target. This is like ringing a bell in the office and getting an idea of the activity within the company. You can go in and like and comment on those like a normal social media feed. I also recommend that, especially within the deal stages and some other areas, it actually becomes quite a bit more personable if you change your user profile pics. And you can do that by clicking on the user settings and just inserting a particular image. So going in and finding, whatever image we want to apply and dragging those in and saving that so that that then pulls through accordingly. Right, so that's the newsfeed. Got the pipeline. We've now got 2 minutes left in this session. I think if I could just very quickly jump onto deal stages here, guys. And I'm going to do this because I'm very happy for myself and for Caroline to have a discussion as a separate with you guys, but to go into a bit more detail. But the deal stages are incredibly an incredibly powerful addition to the dashboard. So let me spend the last 5 minutes just running through this with you. Different elements within the dashboard will refresh every couple of minutes. But if you just hit refresh at the top, you can then change those. You could force a refresh to the server so that it pulls through automatically. But looking at the deal stages, we have draft and active quotes, and then obviously accepted and rejected quotes within the system. However, within the premium license, we've given guys, our clients, the ability to create sub-stages. So these 3 draft stages, it starts off with a needs analysis, then moves on to formulate quote, then check by manager. My deal stages are maybe a little bit more complicated than what yours would be, but the idea is that a rep would be able to see only their own quotes here. A manager would be able to see their team's quotes, and a director could see the entire company's quotes. And what this does is by default, we can see the number of quotes in a particular stage. So right now there's 27 quotes in the needs analysis, 5 in formulate quotes, and 3 in check by manager. Okay, but if I click on the stats button, what that'll do is it'll give us an overview of the total value of those deals within each quote. So within each quoting stage. So in this case, maybe we're not too concerned at the draft stage of formulating quotes. We only want to really look at quotes once we've delivered the proposal and we're in the negotiation phase. So what this does is it gives us an idea. Again, I'm a director, so I can see the entire company. All right. I can see I've got 11 quotes, 220,000 GP. There's one-off cost, there's base pricing. It shows the underlying values within each stage. But what the reps can do is take a deal. So let's say that I've now done a needs analysis. Let's find specifically my quotes. So we'll go and have a look at quotes that I've done. There we go. So I've filtered down to just my quotes now. And let's find a big one, or a relatively nice size deal. 67,000 GP. So I'll drag this to the top. So quote 902. I'm the rep. I've now created the quote. Great. I move that into that stage. You'll see it automatically updates. So now I've got one quote in that stage, and those are the values. But I don't necessarily have to follow line by line. I've already formulated the quote. It's been checked by my manager. I've delivered the proposal. I'm actually now in the negotiation phase. So I drag it all the way through. And what this does is it immediately gives updates. So in negotiation, I've now got 2 quotes in that particular stage. But where this becomes incredibly powerful is post-sale. When a quote is actually accepted and a client gives you go-ahead, because previously in cloud quotes, or if you're just using the standard version, you've got a go-ahead, but just because a deal has been marked as a go-ahead, you don't know whether it's been approved. You don't know whether it's in for deal signing. You don't know whether it's been ordered and delivered. So these post-sale items or stages that we've created here, again, can be whatever you like. You can customize those to suit. And the other thing that you'll see here is we've got little tags on these: software, CCTV, telecoms, etc. What we have allowed our clients to do is create tags and manage it themselves. So I'm just going to remove the tags on these particular quotes by right-clicking. But what we allow you to do is go in and say, right, on this quote 540, I'm going to go in and tag that as something specific. So those tags can be, specific to products, maybe the type of client, it's an active client, or maybe it's this started off as a new client. I could insert, the fact that we're selling CCTV here, or quoting CCTV and telecoms, etc. The idea with applying these tags is, as a manager, you can now go in and have a look and say, okay, well, in the credit vetting or deal signing stage, I'm only concerned with those 2 right now. What I want to look at is all of my deals that have been done by a specific team or a specific user. So I'm going to go and apply a filter. I'll say by the Lions. And you'll see there immediately it's adjusted. Oops, sorry, just bring that back. Immediately it's adjusted to just 7 quotes available for the lines. But the other thing that I want to go and do is apply a filter specifically against what? So all the deals that are tagged as telecoms deals, for example. So now I can see that, remember that the dashboard, the deal stages is up to 120 days by default. If you wanted to change the actual period, we could say from when, for the last week, for the last, so I can clearly see for the last week, there's nothing in credit vetting and deal signing. If I remove that filter, we'll then update accordingly. So the idea is you can apply different filters, including things like, a tag against a particular quote, because it gives you insights into exactly what is currently being quoted on. And the other thing that we can do here, guys, very quickly, lastly, is when it gets to a particular stage, maybe I want to notify a particular user. So for example, this particular quote that I moved across, Ryan's moved across to credit vetting. At this point, I want to notify my sales coordinator that we need to send this through for an approval. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and attach my administrator, in this case, Caroline. Caroline will now get a notification that comes through via email that she's been attached to quote 583. You'll notice that in those email notifications, you can actually click on the link now, and it will specifically open up the quote or the lead or the approval, whatever it's relating to. So in that case, Caroline's been notified. Caroline, if she's got access to opening the quote, can open up that quote, go in and have a look and see, at this point, maybe she needs to submit documentation for approval. If the rep had attached that documentation as a memo in CloudQuote, again, this is part of the CRM, guys. I will show you how this works in the next session, but I'm just giving you an idea here so that we've got discussion points that you might want to raise with us. So additional documents. If I go and insert, copies of ID and financials or whatever it is that's specifically relevant, I could go in. There, Caroline's just shared the notification that she's received. If I go in and attach those docs, so rather than emailing those through, I could attach it against the quote specifically and just drag those in. And once I've saved that, it will save as a memo against that particular quote 583, and in the client section against the client. But what Caroline could now do is open up quote 583 in the deal stages, which I've broken by clicking on the X button. But if I go to my credit vetting, we can go to 583. She could then open up that quote, pick up the necessary documentation by going into the memos, downloading the documentation, submitting for a finance approval. And once it's approved, what she's going to do is move it into the deal signing stage, remove herself by right-clicking, and now attach the next person, whoever's responsible at the next stage. So the idea is that at any given stage, the rep, the manager, the director know exactly how many quotes we have all the way through to a payout stage or even a commission stage, so that your reps know, once it gets to a particular point, that quote is in for commission that particular month. And then once it's concluded and you no longer want the quotes in the deal stages, you can go in and archive the deal. And what that will do is, if I archive these and we just hit refresh here, we'll notice that within that stage, there's no longer any deals in that particular stage. So by default, up to 120 days, and you can go in and obviously apply different filters so that you get insights in terms of how many deals you have in different stages and the values of those deals. Sorry, guys, I know we ran out of time. I'm now pretty much done. I hope that that provided you with some insights on CloudQuote. I'm going to spend another 5 minutes and specifically answer some questions that have come in here. Let's just have a look. Okay, so all teams show discounts or trade in and display it somewhere. Yes, that's something we can do. Again, elements like that, we could discount it within cloud quotes, but the question is, do you want to display it? So remember, there's always the input part of cloud quotes. Let me turn my camera on here again. So there's the input part of cloud quote and what we can insert within the system, whether it's through custom fields or checkboxes, etc. And then there's the output part of it, so the actual template. So there's a lot of customizing we can do within Cloud Quote, but then what do you want to see happen within the templates and when we can recreate that? Some of those things, guys, there would be time, labor costs because it's not part of the initial scope that we did in your initial setup. You know, as you could expect, you know, there's now an evolution. You're asking for additional deal packs, or you're asking for custom reports, things that aren't immediately available out of the system. We don't charge for dev improvements on Cloud Quotes if we feel that there's a benefit to the entire our entire client base. And there's quite a number of cool features that are going to be coming over the next couple of months. But if it's specific to you and the way in which you guys operate, chances are we can do what it is that you want, but is it an input into Cloud Quotes in terms of the user interface, or is it an output in the template? If it's an output in the template and it's longer than 30 minutes, it's going to be billable. If it's a quick change here and there, we're not going to charge for that. Just log a support call via support@cloudquoteafrica.com. Tell us and show us, you know, here's a quote number, Pat. Can we tweak it so that I'm showing my discount here? You know, if I insert discounts, no problem with that. How can I? There's a team of 8. Can the manager have premium only? Yes. So you can choose. You can cherry pick. You can have, you know, specifically just an administrator and a manager with premium access. You'll see that in company admin, where we assign the users, where we create the users themselves, you can see how many users are attached to the company. That's a standard license, and how many of those have premium access. So what we do is you say, okay, well, we've got 10 users. We only want 2 premium licenses. We would give you the 2 premium. And what you would do in the security settings is you can turn on and off who has access to premium access and who has access to managing the clients. That is the CRM admin function. So those 2 are part of the premium access. See here, anything else? Thank you, Max. Thank you for the compliments. So yes, guys, so like in closing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this video, make it available, and hopefully as and when new team members start, you could get them to watch the initial training video. But the hope is that we go through in a little bit more detail here, but also keep you abreast with any new changes and so on that we're going to be loading to the system. One of those items actually, before I close, you'll see in the news feed. That's how a lot of you would have seen on, sorry, not the news feed, in our news tab, not the news feed. In the news tab, we specifically, the idea with this is not to bombard you with spam, guys. It's to inform you of either new features and functions within Cloud Quotes. I know that we had that request again recently from another client. So like when we do dev updates, to make clients aware of what those updates are. We started with that way back in 2020. You know, you can see the relevant news feeds that we sent through, but we're going to be a lot more sort of diligent with this and probably have a quarterly update within our news section. If there's something that you want us to be aware of in terms of a possible feature improvement in Cloud Quotes or a bug that you've discovered, an anomaly within the system, you can also go in, not many guys know this, but there's a feedback button within Cloud Quotes. If you click on the feedback button, you can choose to log a support call, a bug report, a feature suggestion, or even if you're that happy with Cloud Quotes and you've got someone that you think can benefit, send us a referral. That's always appreciated. But you can communicate with us directly from here, and then we'll endeavor to, you know, again, if we feel that the feature improvement is relevant to our client base, we'll add it to the list and add it down the line. But our next webinar is likely going to be, obviously we're going into December, January, will likely be sort of middle of Feb. And then the other thing, just as a last taster for you guys as well, is we've got That will be a webinar regarding the CRM side of things. But I want to have another one sort of March side. We've got a number of clients that are currently testing the integration element between CloudQuote and BPO. We've pretty much finalized that. We're just in the testing stages at the moment. But what I want to do, if you are interested in that, being part of that discussion, again, just send us your details. Obviously, you might not necessarily want your entire team on that. Likely, the business owners, sales directors, and the administrators could jump on, and we can show you what we've specifically done with CloudQuote and BPO and what we're pulling and sending from each of those. That will be in March. So those are the upcoming events. Thank you so much for your time, guys. Thank you for your continued support, and yeah, reach out if there's anything else that you need. Have a great day. I'll stick on here for a while longer, actually. I'll just stop recording for now.